Welcome everyone, and thank you for attending our webinar today, QOZ Fund 3 Update and OZ 2.0 Insights with Ashley Tison. My name is Dave Welk, and I'm Managing Director and Head of Equity Investments here at Origin. Apologies in advance, I'm getting over some sort of summer cold where I completely lost my voice on Saturday, but through some antibiotics and some good care from my wife, I'm back to about 85%. So apologies if there's a little strain in the voice and an occasional cough here and there. But as I mentioned earlier, I'm joined again today by Ashley Tison of OZ Pros. Ashley joined us on a special webinar in April where we discussed at the time what we thought were going to be some of the proposed revisions to the OZ legislation. And as of July 4th, the recently enacted House Bill 1, which is otherwise known as the One Big Beautiful Bill, or the Triple B, or the B Cubed, however you want to shorten it, was signed into law, which included some substantial revisions to the existing OZ regulations. So we're excited to have Ashley back with us again today to provide his insights for investors on the various changes to the legislation. And I'll provide a little bit more of a formal introduction to Ashley later in the discussion when we get into the Q&A. So I'm going to start by covering some macro multifamily trends that we continually observe and analyze that reinforce our position that fundamentals are continuing to improve. And then I'll move on to a quick overview of Fund 3 for fund investors, along with a few updates, and then we'll finish our discussion with Ashley. The intent here is to get through the presentation in about 30 minutes. We'll bring Ashley on for some of his thoughts and insights, and then we'll open up to the group for the Q&A. And I can already see that some of you folks are already populating the Q&A feature. So thank you for that, and we'll get to those at the end. So as it relates to our the two most core fundamental principles in macroeconomics are supply and demand, and we are continuing to see a relief on the supply side while also seeing a bolstering on the demand side, which I'll cover in a bit more detail with some good graphics later. And these are resulting in improved operational fundamentals across the country, but most notably in our target investment markets in the Southeast, Sunbelt, and mountain regions. So as it relates to new supply, this is a chart that we've been discussing on many webinars over the past several quarters. And I'm happy to report that after passing the 50-year supply peak in 3Q of 24, we're seeing a continuation of quarterly declines in demand or in supply, with 2Q 25 quarterly supply now down 32% from the peak. And it's projected to slow by an additional 25% over the next 12 months. And then on to the demand side of the equation. As mentioned previously, the only thing better to pair with declining supply is robust demand. And for the second quarter of this year, U.S. multifamily demand rose to 227,000 units for the quarter. That's a 50% year-over-year increase. And for the year ending, so 12 months ending 2Q of 25, annual U.S. multifamily demand reached an all-time high of 794,000 units of absorption. And to put that in context, that is an 11.1% increase compared to the post-COVID peak for the 12 months ending in 1Q of 22. And it's only the third time since 2000 that it's passed 700,000 units. So demand continuing to be truly off the charts. This slide is great because it puts together both the supply and the demand side and shows what is the true net demand. And so when the blue line exceeds the gray line, as shown really in the post-COVID recovery in late 2020 through late 2022, and now for the third consecutive quarter, we know that the positive effective rent growth is starting to emerge. And when these slopes start to, or at least the slope of these respective lines are suggesting that this trend is going to accelerate from here. This is a great slide that shows, just kind of articulates a number of the strengthening fundamentals in our Sunbelt markets, including Dallas, Atlanta, Phoenix, Austin, Raleigh, and Charlotte, amongst others that are maybe falling just outside of that circle, including Nashville, Jacksonville, Tampa, Denver, and San Antonio.
Hey, Dave.
Yeah.
I'm not seeing slides, and I don't think that anybody else is seeing slides.
Oh.
There's any interaction in the chat. Sorry to interrupt.
All good. Maria, are you able to see the slides on your side by chance?
Yes, I can see the slides and the audience can too.
Okay. All right, all good. I appreciate you monitoring the chat, Ashley. So what I was talking about was in terms of the graphic here showing the strengthening of many of our target markets. These are leading the country in two important statistics. Number one, both in the total units absorbed, and then importantly, as a percentage of existing units. I do see some stuff popping up on the Q&A, but okay, sounds good. Looks like folks are seeing the slides, so all good. And we'll continue on moving through. So there's a lot going on in this slide, but I think it's really great, again, at kind of putting really everything together. And this is our last slide for macro data, but I just wanted to show it because it provides a great visual of where many of our target markets are as it relates to their recovery. So it shows you quarter by quarter, where vacancies are declining, where peak deliveries have been achieved, and frankly, most importantly, where rents are turning positive. And as shown, the recovery is underway already in the first quarter of this year in markets like Salt Lake and Nashville, Orlando, Phoenix, and Denver. We just got into recovery, the defined recovery period as of the second quarter in markets like Tampa, Dallas, Charlotte, and then we are on the cusp of recovery in markets like Raleigh, Atlanta, San Antonio, Jacksonville. The laggard that shows up on this slide is Austin. We discussed Austin fundamentally, in several different webinars over the past several quarters in terms of just its pronounced amount of deliveries over the last few years. But the good thing is that at the end of this year, Austin should turn the corner as well and start its ascent into positive rent growth. I'll spend a little bit of time talking about the fund for those who are either prospective investors or existing investors or new to Origin. I won't spend a ton of time on this, but just kind of wanted to run through some of the overview of what we're focused on. So we are one of the leaders in OZ investing across the country. This is our third fund, having launched this fund about a year and a half ago. We launched our first QOZ fund in 2019, and we now manage nearly $750 million of equity across 24 investments, comprising of 7,000 apartment units and totaling nearly $2 billion of gross asset value. And as is shown as of right per Novogradac, this activity puts us in the top 2% of OZ fund managers nationwide. This is a designation, frankly, we're pretty proud of. Fund 3 is very similar in its strategy to our predecessor funds. We have a singular focus on multifamily, ground-up developments in high-growth Sunbelt and mountain regions. I spent a little time talking about the fundamentals that we track very closely in those markets. The goal here is to achieve the maximum tax efficiency under the OZ legislation and to produce the highest capital gains we anticipate holding for a minimum of 10 years. Our current fund here is contemplated to be roughly 100 to 150 million in total equity. To date, we're roughly about half the way there. We will continue to raise through the end of the year. This will allow us to generate a diversified fund of roughly 4 to 5 investments based on the current deal sizes that we're seeing in the market. And our target returns here are again, very similar to what we projected in the past, 10 to 12% net IRR to the investor over a 10-year hold, which based on that math is going to produce what we believe is a very highly tax efficient return of of 2.25 to 2.5 on invested equity. So we will talk a little bit about some of the value proposition here at Origin in terms of where we invest and some of the strategies that we employ. But as mentioned previously, we solely focus on multifamily. We have no exposure to office and industrial. We have very limited retail, and that's only when it's required within our multifamily communities by municipalities. Most of the time, those are assets that are located in urban locations. And we focus on states and metros within these markets I mentioned that exhibit high population growth and have favorable business and physical climates. And these states have proved to outperform the rest of the country in terms of rent and valuation growth. So we know that we're fishing in the right waters. Additionally, we have markets and resources in all the regions that we invest, which is our boots on the ground, including offices in Charlotte, where I'm based, and Ashley is as well, actually. We were catching up just before a number of encounters that we've had over the years, not knowing it. And then we have offices as well based in Nashville, Dallas, Denver. In real estate, as much as we focus on the technical aspect of it, and it is becoming increasingly technical, it's still a very local, relationship-focused business. And the best way to have a local understanding of the growth neighborhoods and generate the deepest relationships within the markets is to be an active member of the communities where we invest. So we made this strategic shift 10 years ago. I moved down from Chicago to open up our first regional office at the time. We also opened at the same time our Denver office and have continued to expand from there. And I do believe that has paid dividends ever since. And lastly, one of our biggest differentiators is our proprietary AI-powered machine learning model called Multilytics. We've got a little slide to cover some of the highlights on this. And for those of you who tuned in again to some of our other prior webinars, you've heard us espouse the virtues of this tool that we've developed. But I truly think this is one of our most unique differentiators of investment managers in the marketplace. And this platform, to give you a high-level overview, utilizes 4 billion pieces of unique data every single month that drive the accuracy of our future rent forecasts to well over 95% accuracy. If you compare that to some of the leading third-party research providers, based on our actual evaluation, independent evaluation of their performance and accuracy, those tend to be closer to 4%. So quite a big spread between 95 and 4% accuracy and the ability to forecast the future. As I mentioned before, our boots on the ground team utilizes this platform to arm them with unbiased, actionable conviction on where growth is occurring in each one of our micro markets. And we really help that to confirm the visual, quote unquote, observations and feel of being in the market. And this has really helped to augment our decision making at every level. It allows us to underwrite and assess risk very quickly. It helps us to remove historical biases and informs us on where to invest and maybe more importantly, where not to. And particularly, this has become valuable for OZ locations, which they've experienced wildly different levels of gentrification over the past 14 years since the 2010 census was taken, which was the basis for which the OZ tracts have been designated. And I'll talk a little bit more later on about how I think with some of the changes in the regulations, especially as it relates to lower incomes under OZ 2.0, I think this tool is going to be even more critical for our site selection. So I thought I had moved I'll jump back to this pipeline slide, but I wanted to provide a quick update on Biltmore Village, which is one of the fund's assets. I was actually up there last week, spent some time in the market with a number of the members of our team, and I was able to see a lot of the progress firsthand. So we've got some updated site photos to share with you. But a lot of site work underway over the past quarter. We've really advanced the project meaningfully. We've resolved a number of key construction challenges, and we're maintaining momentum despite continued weather. We've had one of the rainiest August that I can recall in late July after a decade of living here in Charlotte, and that's spread through up to the mountains in North Carolina. So our teams there have been great in adapting to the wet climates. It's harder to complete your site work if your site improvement work and equipment cannot make its way through the site. So our site contractor has been great at mitigating some of those potential delays. We had some delays with our domestic water permit that we cleared. And as you can see, there's been a number of retaining walls that have been built, especially at building 2 is nearing completion. And when we were on site last week, we saw the wood was delivered for the framing. So we're about to go vertical on one of our first buildings up there. So that'll be very exciting to be back up there again soon to see the vertical construction take place. As it relates to the broader Biltmore Village submarket, we've talked a little bit in the past about the recovery efforts from Hurricane Helene. That was a big part of our trip too, is we wanted to meet with folks in the community, on the retail development side, the hospitality side, with civic leaders, and talk about, how the recovery efforts are progressing. So proud to report and excited to report that the recovery efforts are substantially underway. The Grand Bohemian Hotel, which is one of the fixtures at the village, just less than half a mile from the property, is reopening. New restaurants such as Cava has since completed construction of its new restaurant, is open. The renovations at the historic Biltmore Mansion are completed. So there is a lot of recovery underway. Just again, anecdotally, last time I was up there was towards the end of last year, and there was still a lot of debris from trash that was still in the river. There was a lot of downed trees that were still in the riverfront. So most of that has been cleared. There were, groups that were floating down the river, taking float trips. There was fishing boats out there. Downtown was vibrant and alive. So it was honestly really great to see Asheville back to its, not fully back to where it was, but the vibrancy was definitely restored. So looking ahead, framing for the townhomes, as I mentioned, is going to start here in September, and then we'll follow that with the multifamily building framing in fourth quarter. So overall, the project remains well positioned, and again, great to see the broader Biltmore Village and Asheville submarket continue with its recovery. I had showed the pipeline stage in a previous slide, but I really wanted to talk about this opportunity, which is a very late stage pipeline deal. It's something that we've been evaluating for months now, and I'm very excited, and hoping to not jinx it, that we're hoping to have this formally under control later this week. But this is an exceptionally well located, fully entitled opportunity in a highly walkable area within Old Town Scottsdale. For those of you who have been to Phoenix and been to Old Town, you're aware that Old Town has got some of the best dining, retail, and entertainment options in the area. It's immediately proximate to a number of employment hubs in and around the broader Scottsdale market. So very excited for this deal to come together and add this hopefully to fund. This project will feature 190 luxury multifamily units. It's designed to have top of market amenities, including resort style pool, high-end co-working spaces, and then we'll have a top of the market membership quality fitness center as well. So again, very excited for this opportunity. It represents what we think is a really strong risk-adjusted return. And as we get further into due diligence and structuring of the opportunity, we'll provide more updates. I'll circle back to a pipeline stage or slide that I had shown previously, but this slide is kind of ebbed and flowed over the past several quarters. We have a number of early stage pipeline opportunities that are under evaluation. As of now, this Austin opportunity, which we've continued to work with the developer in terms of pricing, and structuring, and the deal itself has some very unique and favorable tax advantages. This is the nearest pipeline opportunity that we have available, and we're continuing to review. But beyond that, we have continued opportunities available that we're looking at in markets like Nashville and Charlotte. We have been very close on some opportunities, additional opportunities in Phoenix. Phoenix has been, frankly, one of the better markets for us in terms of opportunity set that we've seen. And then Vegas as well. We've been evaluating a number of opportunities out there too. It's just the marketplace continues to be challenging to make our very stringent criteria, or to meet our very stringent criteria. As we mentioned before, rents are starting to accelerate in terms of growth, but as we sit here today, we're looking at what we believe is the trough in rents. So from an underwriting standpoint, frankly, we've been passing on a lot of deals that we like fundamentally. We like the quality of the real estate, we like the development partners, but frankly, they just have been thin from a margin perspective. I do believe some of those deals that haven't gotten off the ground yet will start to pencil as rent growth starts to emerge in the market. So I anticipate that this pipeline will continue to grow over time. So I'm going to jump into OZ 2.0 so we can finally get into the meat of the presentation and what is changing under 2.0 given the recent regulatory updates included in the Triple B. And probably the biggest plus of the OZ program is that it's now permanent. So no more termination of the program on December 31st, 2026, which prior to July 4th was slated to sunset at the end of 26. So instead, OZs will be reselected every 10 years by the governors and then certified by the Treasury. And this first recertification is slated to occur on July 1st of 2026, which will then become effective on January 1st, 2027. One of the things that we have been evaluating quite a bit, and again, as I mentioned before, our multi-lytics platform is really going to help us kind of sift through the new mapping, and we'll show what at least an early indication of the new OZ mapping here in a little bit. But the eligibility criteria is unfortunately going to be a bit tighter. So tracts now must meet what is being determined as a poverty designation, so greater than 20% of area median income, but must also be below 70% of AMI, which that means a lot of the previously eligible zones are no longer going to qualify. And another small subset of the regulatory changes here were that governors could previously designate contiguous higher income tracts adjacent to these lower income zones. So it was kind of a way to insert some areas that have gentrified faster but were located to adjacent lower income tracts. That is now prohibited under OZ 2.0. So what we ultimately think this is going to lead to is a shrinking of the overall universe of eligible tracts. And based on some modeling that we've seen using 2023 census data, and again, I think we still need to clarify exactly, is it 2020 census data? Is it going to be 23? Is it going to be 25? Ashley and I were talking about just firming up what we think is going to be the baseline for that. But if you use the 2023 census data, that could lead to potentially a 22% reduction in the total number of OZ tracts, at least from some of the research that we've seen. So from about 9,000 eligible tracts to 7,000 currently within the US. So ultimately, what does this mean for multifamily development? A few things, at least based on how we're processing this. There's some potential risks here for new deal flow and timing, or the perception of a dead zone. So gains that were invested before December 31 of 2026, those will follow OZ 1.0 rules and must be recognized by that date. So there's no step up in basis beyond the deferral. For gains that are invested after December 31, 2026, entering to OZ 2.0, this will be a rolling 5-year deferral there'll be a flat 10% step up at year 5. And I think Ashley's going to maybe touch on some implications of that and what that may do for the flow of funds into the space going forward. And then once under the new OZ 2.0, you will still get the full tax exclusion on appreciation after 10 years. But what this could create potentially is a transitional dead zone in 2026 where capital gain deferment are maybe locked in and some of the benefits are delayed. Could impact some deal structuring. We're evaluating that over time. And then ultimately what this may lead, or one of the other elements that the program is pushing is this rural opportunity funds focus. So OZ 2.0 introduces this notion of the qualified rural opportunity funds. There's some enhanced incentives, and we'll cover in the next slide, you know, the kind of the key differences between 1.0 and 2.0. But if you are investing in a qualified rural opportunity fund, you will get a 30% step up in your basis in year 5, and then a 50% substantial improvement threshold for existing buildings and projects located in qualified rural census tracts. So here's the slide that we've created that compares or creates the summary of differences between OZ 1.0 and 2.0. Most notably, just want to highlight what we discussed before, which is the permanence of the program with the 10-year redesignations, the income thresholds, and some of the benefits, including for rural investments. So this is the EIG map for what we think will ultimately be the change in eligible OZ tracks. And it's hard to see this, which we had to kind of pan it out so we could try and fit in all of our target investment markets from Phoenix to Florida. But what this generally shows for the most of our markets is that the shrinking footprint for OZ eligible tracks based on the new income limits, and the orange is showing eligible OZ tracks under 2.0 with the gray kind of overlay showing the amount and size of tracks under 1.0. So the question is, you know, is OZ 1.0 still investing in? The short answer is absolutely. We actually believe this is a really unique opportunity to invest in really well located legacy 1.0 sites that still qualify for new investment through the end of 26. And Ashley may be able to clarify a little bit on, we believe that actually will extend for investment into 2028 for some of those legacy 1.0 tracks. So we think now is the time just to take advantage for some of these tracks that have seen a lot of gentrification and huge income growth and valuation growth since 2010. We think the time is now to invest. So this is really kind of a call to action for our investors, and we are absolutely on the hunt to try and start on development for as many OZ 1.0 opportunities that we can between now and the end of 2026. For those of you who are new to investing in OZ, and we're just curious about the hypothetical tax benefits of investing in an OZ property, we have this on our website too. We do a lot of thought leadership. I know Ashley does too, and I'm sure he's got some examples on his website of some of the tax benefits. But as you can see, there's a lot of benefits in various state and federal taxes over 10 years. So on $1 million hypothetical investment, there, if you look to the bottom, there's nearly $800,000 higher after-tax profits generated in an OZ investment. So very powerful investment opportunity. Again, this isn't just from, it's for any capital gain that's generated, not just from the gain of generated from the sale of real estate, but any capital gains. So wanted to talk a little bit about our OZ strategy longer term. And this is, I think, our last slide before we bring Ashley on. So in summary, you know, what we believe, as I mentioned before, is, you know, we're starting to evolve our understanding of the new rules of the road. This just got sent out, roughly 6 weeks ago. We quickly dove into the legislation and reviewed it, talking to a number of industry experts like Ashley and others in terms of what the implications are. I'd say that overall, we're excited about the prospect, as I mentioned before, to invest in a number of these OZ 1.0 legacy sites. Again, we've got very stringent criteria for location, asset quality, long-term growth prospects. So we've already identified where we want to be. So we've been investing in these markets really now for 6 years. So we're looking for continued deployment of capital into these identified areas. And then for 2027 and beyond, it's likely, as I mentioned, this opportunity set will decrease for us due to the revised income thresholds and the push to affordable tracts and urban tracts. But as mentioned before, this is where our proprietary multifamily or multilytics tool will continue to be heavily utilized for us in site selection. It's going to help us sift through quickly, identify the opportunities with the highest growth potential. So in summary, we expect to continue to be a leader in the OZ investment space. And most importantly, we're excited that this program has achieved permanent status, because there was a real risk up until this new legislation came out that the program was going to go away. So we still believe in the long-term benefits and the tax-efficient benefits that the program provides. So I am going to bring on Ashley. Before we bring him on officially, and I'll ask a few questions of him, I'll give him a very quick intro. But again, welcoming Ashley Tison of OZ Pros back with us for a second time. Ashley is the founder of OZ Pros, which is a leading opportunity zone consultancy. He's a leading consultant and attorney of OZ's tax advantage structures and investment strategies. He has advised over 500 commercial property investors, family offices, investment advisors, and high net worth individuals on how to best maximize their tax savings and real estate investments, how to maximize the positive community impact of their projects, selecting an optimal investment strategy, and properly navigating the applicable regulations. As based on our prior conversation with Ashley, I can confirm when his bio says he's an engaging, enthusiastic speaker or guest. He was from his car last time on a anniversary trip with his wife. So we're excited to have him back with us again today. So welcome back, Ashley.
Thanks, Dave. It's a pleasure to be on. Man, we got to shorten down that bio and just be like, I think I need 2 words: OZ Sherpa. That's it.
Yeah, last time as the self-proclaimed OZ Sherpa.
That's right. We'll just go from there. Well, super excited to be back on here. I love the stuff that's going on in the chat. I love it when I'm part of webinars where there's lots of interactivity, and there's been some great questions. Really fired up about OZ 2.0. There's been lots of kind of back and forth and, mixed messaging out there relative to the way that I think that all tax programs go, and certainly any kind of new legislation, is that there's usually all kinds of, misinformation. And one of the things that I think that this resolves that happened in 1.0 is that there were a number of financial advisors that are like, man, this program ends in 2026. It was 2018 at the time. They're like, that's only 8 years. That's not enough time for us to justify really getting to know it and understand it and putting it into our repertoire. Now that it's permanent, and now that people have seen the power of it, they've seen the actual numbers relative to what it does for communities, and then they've also seen what kind of impact it can have on taxes. I think that there's way more financial advisors right now that are like, wow, I need to make sure that I add this into my quiver of arrows that I can use for my clients, because this is a really powerful tool. And if you're a financial advisor and you're not doing that, you need to start, because once again, this is an extremely powerful tool. And I'm going to answer a couple of questions in there. Now, this is for people who have capital gains money. If you don't have capital gains, you're out of the playground. And we thought that they were going to fix that. We thought that that was one of the things that were going to come in. It was in the House version, but it didn't make the Senate version where you could bring in non-capital gains. So I can't remember who was asking that question. I think it was, well, I'd have to scroll back through, but yeah, the answer is that you have to have capital gains in order to play. Now, one of the things that people need to evaluate, and this goes into another question, is should I go ahead and, sell my stuff now and exercise my gain, or should I wait till 2027? And my analysis is you ought to get in now, and you ought to get in now. And there's a couple of reasons for that. I said this on the last webinar, the old Chinese proverb, when was the best time to have planted a tree? 30 years ago. When's the second best time? Right now. When was the best time to have started your opportunity fund or your investment in an opportunity fund? Back in 2018, when this thing came out, because then you'd be 10 years in 2028, which is 3 years from now. When's the second best time? Right now. And so if you've got the ability to be able to execute a capital gain, I'm going to show you, and I think that it would make sense for people to do that right now, get that into a qualified opportunity fund, because we've got a unique window to be able to substantially reduce the value that you're going to of your investment on paper as of December 31st, 2026, thereby reducing the amount of tax you're going to pay in 2027. And so it presents a unique opportunity to be able to evaluate pin-up capital gains right now and to say, oh, wow, I could invest into one of Origin's deals, and because it's in construction, I'm going to get between a 30 to maybe 55% discount on that just because it's under construction. And I know that Origin's got really good, analysts and valuation experts are going to back that up. And then I'm going to get a discount for lack of a marketability, DLOM. I'm also going to get a discount for lack of control, a DLOC. And now coupled up, you could be in excess of 50%. Where else in the tax code or in any other kind of tax mitigation strategy are you able to save 50% on taxes relative to what you're going to pay? And there's really, I don't know of any. I mean, we're talking like tax credit style here. And so I think that it's a unique opportunity to be able to recognize gain, put it into a fund that's under construction right now, that's going to have a decrease in value on the valuation, and then be able to pay less in taxes. Because remember, and they had to draft this into the legislation in order to accommodate people's concerns that the investments could go down. And so they said, listen, you're either going to pay taxes on your original gain or the value of your investment at the time as of December 31st, 2026. This window to be able to do that, to get that significant valuation drop based off of a fairly recent investment, is not going to be there in the future. Because after 2027, the great thing is that you get a rolling 5-year deferral in 2027. So I'm not going to discount that. That's a great benefit that the new OZ 2.0 program has. And with a potential 30% reduction if you're in a rural qualified opportunity fund. But inside of that, your taxes roll and you pay them every 5 years. And so it's the value of your QOZ investment at the time, or what your original gain was 5 years from the time you started. And so it's a lot tougher to be under construction 5 years out. And quite frankly, if you're under construction 5 years out, then probably something's gone wrong with your deal. And so, because you're not making any money on your money for the 5 years. So this presents a unique window to be able to get into a deal fairly quickly, not without a whole lot of time between when you invest and December 31st, to be able to write down your investment on paper and thus be able to pay less money in taxes. And so that's one of the reasons why I think that, it's like, hey, that's case in point. Number one, get your 10-year clock started, because it's not how long you hold the asset, it's how long you hold your investment in the fund. So get your 10-year clock started on your investment, get the discounts associated with going into something that's under construction, and then you're going to pay less in taxes. I think we just hit a bunch of questions there.
I was going to say, you not only did you cover a number of Q&A questions, I think you covered a number of my initial questions that I was looking for some insight from you on. So that was great. And I may come back to some of those points that you raised just to spend a little bit more time kind of digging into. But if you were to, so you noted a couple of misconceptions that you're hearing. What would you say maybe is the biggest one, to go back to kind of what you said previously, that you hear time and time again repeated about the new program?
Yeah, so there's lots of concerns. And this is the other piece, right? And there was a question in here about if the deals that Origin was doing under 1.0, if the zones get redesignated because of different eligibility requirements, do those deals all of a sudden now not become eligible? And the answer is no. There was grandfathering language in the Opportunity Zone Transparency, Extension, and Improvement Act. OZTIA is what they shortened it to. And I think that we're going to see that grandfathering language get pulled into the regs so that it makes it so that deals that have at least $200,000 in them can continue to raise money into those deals, even under OZ 2.0, even past the expiration of the OZ 1.0 zones. So just a couple of key dates. So the zones were set to expire under 1.0 December 31st of 2028. And then under the new legislation, or the proposed legislation, they were just going to have them expire December 31st, 2026. The Senate version revised that, changed that to where there's now a new designation of zones that happen in 2026 that take effect January 1st of 2027. So there's an overlap between January 1st, 2027 and December 31st, 2028, where you can go into 2.0 zones and 1.0 zones. But that window is closing on 1.0 zones. And so the window's closing on the ability to be able to get into the areas that that have probably gone up in value significantly since the 2010 census. That's another thing, is that the eligibility criteria is going to be based upon 2020 census data as opposed to 2010 census data where it was before. And so automatically that's going to result in a shift from the 1.0 tracks that we saw. The other piece is that under 1.0, there were contiguous tracks that got to get designated. And so there were a lot of tracks where you're kind of rolling through, you're like, man, how's that an opportunity zone? And I know that you guys have a fair number of projects in those areas, and that you've identified continuing. And that's, I think, a closing window of opportunity, is to be able to get into those projects and tracks that are going to ultimately expire. But if you're in a deal, you're in a deal. So just want to make sure that we put that one to rest, because that's a common misconception. So I think that this presents, once again, kind of that closing window of time. It's like, hey, get in before those things go away.
So to that point, and I'll let you take a quick drink. Do you anticipate that there's going to be a flurry of deal flow in the marketplace? And I can provide my perspective on that, and I think a few folks have asked that question, but curious on what your thoughts are, and given that it seems like there's going to be a flurry of activity for 1.0 sites.
I definitely think that that's going to be the case. Particularly, and so this will be interesting to see if there actually is kind of a lull in investment activity between now and 2027, because of, I think, the misconception, as was identified in some of the questions, about, well, why would I put money into it now instead of waiting until 2027? I kind of explained the reason why, but but for somebody explaining that to them, most people are going to be like, I'll just wait till 2027. Now, when you take that discount, and there was a question that I saw in there, the fund is going to provide the information relative to the discount. That's usually the way that it would be best. Now, the investor will be the one that files that information on their tax return information, but you're going to want to get the discounting information from the fund itself. Now, technically, an investor could prepare that, but if you're going to take that stance, so this is also a caveat. So it's a great opportunity, but it's also something that you got to make sure that you've got a really good valuation expert who's going to be there to be able to explain the discount to the IRS, which is one of the advantages of investing with a great sponsor like Origin. You guys get the best of the best, whether it's attorneys or accountants or advisors. So certainly your valuation experts are going to have they're going to have all kinds of alphabet soup after their name relative to their designations. And so that's the key thing that you need to know when if you're looking to take that discount and to get in there before 2027.
Yeah, and I think there's been a number of questions that have been asked about, from fund investors or prospective fund investors. How will we be executing that here at Origin for this fund, and maybe for those who are in funds 1 and 2 as well? The short answer is we will circle back with that. This is something that we're discussing in real time. Our fund controller, our 2 co-founders, Dave and Michael, are involved. We have tax counsel, outside tax counsel engaged. So the short answer is we were going to follow up on this. We haven't had to prepare this in the past because taxes have been deferred and still are deferred until December 31st, 2026, payable and by April 15th of 27. So this isn't something that we have to evaluate today. In our prior funds 1 and 2, we've gotten through construction value and the vast majority, if not all, of our projects. I mean, there's a couple in Fund 2 that will still be underway. This fund is probably going to have the most unique characteristics because it's going to have the shortest window of time between now and December 31st of 2026. Biltmore will still be under construction. For someone who asked the question, that is currently the sole asset in the fund. The Scottsdale deal I just mentioned will be the second investment. We have the pipeline opportunity in Austin that we've identified. To hit on another question that was asked about the pipeline slide, I think from Manon, who asked the question in prior webinars, we showed a much deeper pipeline. The reason why that's not as deep today is because admittedly, some of those deals have fallen off. We continue to monitor the economics of the deals, and rents just hadn't moved yet. It doesn't mean that they're not still alive. Those deals haven't been capitalized, frankly, by anyone yet, but we're waiting to see real rent growth occur in the marketplace because we're looking at moment in time when we're underwriting something. We're not using our multi-lytics to forecast the growth and underwriting a forward, trended yield. Everything has to be based on observable comps in real time. And that's frankly been the challenge in the market, not just for us, but for every capital allocator across the world, or certainly here domestically, the US, is that when you look around and you comp rents, we are sitting in this trough period where we're at the low point. So I do think the pipeline will pick back up. Those are deals that have been taken off, frankly, just because they're sitting on the sidelines, but we can re-engage on those at any time. Back to the question on taxes, we will provide guidance on that. It'll be based upon where the fund assets are at that point in time. We'll continue to add, hopefully 2 to 3, maybe 4 more opportunities to this fund by then. So whatever the last deal that will get invested, that will be invested in on behalf of the fund, we will do that under OZ 1.0. We're not going to this fund will not drift into 2.0. We will have the capital that is available for investment. Ultimately, we'll be under the OZ 1 guidelines, and then we will provide tax guidance prior to the end of 2026 based upon where each one of those projects is at in its development timeline. We'll provide guidance on some of the DLOM, the DLOC tax values that Ashley had discussed in the past. So try to uncover or hit on a number of the points there, but just to be perfectly clear with folks, whether it be funds 1 and 2 or this fund, we are going to continue to maintain the same methodology in which we establish the share price. So the NAV will begin floating, and really after the capital's been deployed at that point in time, we will create a market value. We have very detailed policies and procedures on how we establish market value. Tax considerations are something different, right? So there's difference between the net asset value of what the market value of the underlying properties are versus the taxable value based on status completion. I am not an attorney or an accountant, so but we will be providing guidance from consultants and experts on that. But some questions have been asked about the share price and where that goes and how that's floating. That will be based on the market value of each one of the projects. And I think in webinars in the past, we've detailed on how we calculate the NAV for projects that are under construction. So we look at a series of factors and we take a discount rate based upon a series of milestones in which the fund or which the individual property is at. And some of those key milestones are, when the foundation has been laid, when we reach initial certificate of occupancy, various lease-up milestones, final CO, and then final stabilization. So there are varying discount rates that we apply based on, again, the prevailing market discount rates for core assets, and we determine valuation from that perspective. We have a very detailed policy on this. I don't want folks to be concerned about, are we going to be doing things anything differently with this fund? The answer is no. Just there are some tax considerations that would come the end of 2026 if there are properties that are still in process or in development. We will make adjustments as necessary for that. So we'll continue to float the share. We will float the share price at $10. Open that up initially after the capital has been deployed, and then we will continue to do quarterly valuations. And then one of the questions I was asked, how do I exit after 10 years? Wesley asked that question. You will have the ability to sell based on, again, over the 10-year period. We will continue to do ongoing NAV evaluations of the share price. After 10 years, you will be able to exit the fund based upon the then current NAV. We will create liquidity mechanisms, or you can choose to stay in long term and enjoy the benefits through, at least for OZ1, I think it's through 2046. Is that right, Ashley? The program runs for 20 years beyond the end of the...
Yeah, it expires December 31st, 2047. And then for 2.0, it's 30 years. So it's basically 30 years from the designation of the zone. So for, you're going to have 2.0 and then you'll have 3.0, that kind of thing. And they get the zones get redesignated every 10 years. So in 2037, that'll be 3.0. And so from 2027 to 2057, right, for 2.0. So it's 30 years from the designation of the zones. That seems like a really long time from now.
Well, God willing, I will be in my mid-70s. So yes, it is a long time from now. But the point being is that, and we talked about this too at length. This is a great estate planning tool. Again, I am not a financial advisor, but just the tax efficiencies that are provided here and the ability to grow wealth over a 30-year period and not pay tax on that is unprecedented, at least in commercial real estate. So.
So inside of OB3, they increase the lifetime exemption amounts to $15 million per individual that'll then adjust for inflation. So people who have estates over $30 million, that drastically reduces the number of people who actually even need to consider it. But if you are, opportunity zones present an unbelievable play, because it's not the value at your death that goes against your estate, it's how much you contributed. So for purposes of your estate, when you put it into an OZ, you're locked and loaded relative to your estate valuation at the amount that you put into it. And then your estate, your heirs will step into your shoes and get the tax-free benefit. They got to hold 10 years. It's got to hold 10 years from the date of purchase, but they'll be able to get the step up in basis to fair market value. So effectively, all that cash could go to them and come to them tax-free, and all that would go against your lifetime exemption amount would be the original amount that you put into the deal. So that's, I mean, it's amazing.
It's amazing. I think we've hit most of the questions that I had teed up. You covered a lot on the front end, and we appreciate that. Covered, the volume of new opportunities. Maybe I guess, and this is just a general question for you, but what would you see maybe as the biggest opportunity? Whether that's maybe geographically or asset type for the OZ, because obviously we just focus on multifamily, but I'm just curious from a broad perspective if you think that there's some benefits, maybe outside of things that we cover.
Yeah, so I think that operating businesses are the biggest play here, because it's really easy to locate a operating business. You can pretty much put it anywhere assuming that it's not tied to the need to be, at a really swanky mall or something like that you could put operating businesses in a variety of places. And I think that that's where probably the real play is. And I think that there's been kind of a lack of that's happened thus far. And I think that we're going to see way more operating businesses kick in. I really think that there's also going to be value plays and value opportunities inside of the multifamily space continuing forward as well. It'll be interesting to see if that is applicable, in the rural plays, because by definition, the rural, you can't be inside of a zone or census tract that has more than 50,000 people, or be contiguous to a city of 50,000 people. And I think that might make it so that multifamily, and really kind of nice multifamily, is harder to do. But I do think that that's also going to get a lot of attention. I saw in the comments that Jimmy pointed out that the 30-year roll is one based upon the initial investment. So I'll have to look at that one again. And I think he might be right on that. It's generally 30 years. So you've got a long time before you actually have to recognize it. You have to hold it 10 years, but you get to hold it 30. And the question is when does that 30 expire? I know for 1.0 expires in 2047.
Awesome. I'm going to run through some of the Q&A because we have some early ones. I just want to make sure we get to those. And some of these are origin specific questions that I'll be happy to take. And then Ashley, I'll kick some of these more technical questions, regulatory questions your way. So I'm going to kind of run through it quickly because we're at the top, almost at the top of the hour.
Yep.
So I'm going to start back in the beginning. Capital gains invested by the end of 2019 year, we have paid taxes less 50% 7 years between 26. I mean, I think, Tison, the answer to your question is yes for OZ 1.0. Even though you invested the capital in 2019, your original tax liability will be due on April 15th of 2027.
And you will get to reduce it by 15%. That's correct.
Correct. Yep, that's right. Manon's got a few in here. I think we've answered some previously. Is QOZ 3, which is Fund 3, going to be extended past 2025? I'm assuming that's going to also push out the 10-year withdrawal deadline. And I think there's a few other questions about this as well. Currently, we have extended the capital raise for this fund. Previously had extended it. And it is slated to close on December 31st, 2025. With some of the changes to the regulations that basically are going to, we think, accelerate deal activity for OZ 1.0 into 2026. There have been some discussions about extending it, some period of time into 26. That has not been approved. We have not formally decided on that yet. We've discussed it internally. If we decide to make any changes about extending it, we will let you know. I do think, personally, and this has been my positioning as part of our investment committee, I do think it would benefit existing fund investors, although, Manan, you are correct. Whatever period of time that we extend the acceptance of new capital into 2026, it would extend a commensurate amount of time on the back end for that 10-year compliance period. But I do think expanding the fund, taking advantage of some of these opportunities, creating more diversification for the fund is a good thing.
So Dave, if that does as it relates to selling an individual project, so if you had cash that came into a project and you had it over the course of like 2 or 3 years, then realistically you're probably going to wait 10 years from the last of the cash that came in. But your investors could sell their interest at any time after their 10-year investment window expires. And so if you have alternative means of liquidity for them, they could exit and they will be able to get the step up in basis to fair market value. They don't have to wait until you exit an asset if you've got other ways to provide them liquidity.
So the clock is based on their respective 10-year timeline.
Investment, correct.
Investment. Gotcha.
Yep.
Well, good clarification on that. This is why we have the Sherpa on. But yeah, so we will have liquidity mechanisms in place at that point in time. As I mentioned, we'll have an NAV that will continue to float and be valued on a quarterly basis. And one of the things I think that Rob had asked previously or expressed some concern about, ultimately any changes to the valuation methodology. And I know we talked about some of the accounting treatment, but I just want to be very clear that we're not changing anything. Again, we'll be using third-party legal, accounting, audits. Everything will be, frankly, just the same that we've always operated as an investment manager. So there's not going to be anything that's new and different the way we account for that. The only thing, again, to reiterate is that we will, if there are tax benefits to the investor, to evaluate in process under development construction projects in the fund. We'll certainly explore that, but we'll get full opinions, from, again, third-party experts to confirm everything we're doing is by the book. Let me go back to John. Asked a question. Do you see any negative effect on demand with continued decline in immigration, legal or not? Great question. Curious, Ashley, and maybe if you've got some thoughts on this, I'll take a quick stab on that. But we haven't seen it play out. I think it's still pretty new in terms of some of the curbing of immigration. One of the things that we look at pretty closely is the labor side of a lot of our construction projects, and that I think is where we were initially concerned, is maybe some of the skilled labor, some of the immigrant labor that's being used in a lot of our construction projects. If you start to see some issues with that in terms of just less employees able to complete the same amount of work, and you're going to, therefore, that will drive up wages for the existing folks. We haven't seen a significant increase in costs yet. Continuing to monitor that. I think the bigger driver in overall costs kind of been maintaining a certain level of equilibrium is the fact that the market, in terms of, I talked about the percentage of decreases in supply from where we were at the peak. There's still a lot of general contractors that are out there begging for work, looking for work. I mean, we've started to see some impacts on the residential side. Some of the large home builders have slowed some of their pipeline activity. So I think labor in general is frankly still looking for work. And frankly, the supply pipeline is not going to turn back on in a meaningful way. So I think we have some pricing pressures on the construction, or pricing power on the construction side for the next several quarters, but haven't seen the impacts of immigration yet. Ash, I don't know if you have any thoughts on that.
I don't know that anybody has, and I don't know that there will be any way to really tangibly measure that, right? I think that it's going to be based upon kind of bigger macroeconomic trends than just that piece of it. And also, I think that if there were to be an effect, I think that it would be an effect on assets that are significantly further down the totem pole relative to value as well. So, I mean, I don't think that it's going to have a significant effect on the higher end product.
There was a question asked by Joe, I'm sorry, I don't know, by Evan about where will the Scottsdale units get water? Love that question. So we actually, I mean, in all seriousness, we have received this question because we've been active in Phoenix for a long time, and we actually wrote a really good thought leadership piece on the concerns of Arizona's water usage. It actually was written by our market officer who covers Phoenix for us. It's on our website. I'm gonna see if I can maybe add this to the chat somewhere. I think I can not just add, or I can add a question. So I added this to the chat. I don't know if you all can see it, but there's a link to some thought leadership we did on this. But the upshot is an interesting factoid is that water usage in Phoenix peaked in 1980, and there's actually less water usage and it's much more efficient usage of water today, despite the fact that Metro has added 3.5 million people. There's a lot of infrastructure improvements that have been made to Phoenix to help address some of these concerns. So it's been something that's been 40 years in the making. And Angela said she didn't see that in the chat, but we'll be sure to follow up with that article. But something that we are monitoring, but we are not concerned about. But if we, this will be something that emerges over time. This isn't going to be a trend that all of a sudden we wake up and say, oh, there's no water in Phoenix. It'll be a 20, 30, 40-year heads up if there's real concern there. So great question. I'll keep rolling through. Manon had asked a question about Austin in terms of, are we seeing rents trend positively for the next few quarters? Where are we seeing them based on multi-analytics and our projections? How does it rank in your set of markets for overall opportunity to develop or acquire? We believe, based on our forecasting, that we are going to see rents turn very consistent with what I reported earlier, which is the end of the year. We're probably a little bit more bullish maybe than some of the other market forecasters in terms of the pace of recovery, but make no mistake, I mean, Austin has seen certainly its share of oversupply. There are certain pockets that have seen it worse than others. Suburban north, suburban northeast submarkets, infill, downtown, east side, differing pockets of Austin are getting hit worse than others. Long term, very bullish on the fundamentals of Austin. We continue to see job growth and tech-related job growth in particular be very robust. We continue to see more and more development and jobs added by SpaceX and Tesla and others. So long term, again, and this is over a 10-year period that we're making these investments, we're very bullish on Austin. The one challenge that is not just Austin related, it's throughout Texas, is that property taxes are very high, excuse me, in Texas. So what we look for, not only in this fund, but frankly in all of our funds, are for tax advantage opportunities, which is the deal I mentioned previously on the pipeline, where you are you're taking advantage of a 99-year ground lease. In exchange for that, you're removing your property off the tax roll, which in that case, takes $3,000 to $4,000 or 50% of your operating expenses off the table. So it allows you to generate very high yields. So, we're not just looking at the Texas opportunities with a blanket vision for our opportunity set. We're looking for very specific, nuanced, highly structured deals within Texas. And then we're looking for, again, as an overlay, where are the submarkets and micro locations that are poised for outsized growth via our multi-analytics platform. Joe asks, will Infill Scottsdale project be part of Fund 3? Yes, covered the water one. This would be a good one for you, Ashley. The question asks for the QOF might encourage development of a second vacation home developments, especially around natural features such as lakes. However, as a word of caution, quite a few rural OZ tracts or Native American reservations have their own limitations. I guess this kind of dovetails back into rural opportunity sets, but I guess you already kind of addressed this, where you think maybe the best advantage there will be to relocate operating companies into some of these rural tracts as the best way to make kind of a play on rural OZs.
I mean, I love his idea there, right? That it could get picked up to where people are doing, higher end, second home vacation things. We saw that. We're seeing it happening in Bend, Oregon, in Opportunity Zone tracks there, in Broken Bow, Oklahoma. I know some folks that are doing some cabins, there that are, they're like 8-bedroom, 8-bath, like 10,000 square feet. So I think that he's got a point, and I love it because it's bringing activity, it's bringing demand, it's bringing construction jobs, it's bringing all of that stuff to these areas that probably wouldn't have seen it but for that happening. And so I think, to his point, I think that that's probably going to be a good thing. Now, would it be a lot better if it was, multifamily housing or, affordable housing that's happening in rural areas that need it? Yeah, sure. But it's been amazing what the program's accomplished relative to getting the attention of private capital. But, we can't solve all ills through this. And so there's going to be people that utilize it for stuff that's going to, and it's going to be the things that make money. And I think that those are the things that we're going to see to really take off in rural areas. And as long as there's new capital coming into the areas, that's what this program's all about.
Absolutely. I think we're pretty much to the end. I've answered most of these questions already, a few that I haven't maybe addressed specifically, but one of the questions from Angela about 4 to 6% annual distribution years after 4 years, or is that after 10? Angela, that's our guidance for after 4 years. And once we have reached stabilization for the underlying properties, similar guidance that we provided in our prior funds. That's a pretty, again, there are a series of assumptions that are based on that. We use some forward-looking data on where we think swaps are going to, forward yield curves are going to be trending at that point in time for refinance rates. But yes, after 4 years, assuming that our projections are correct on forward treasury yields and our refinance rates, that will be generating a 4 to 6% annualized return and distribution. Sorry, not return, but distribution. A lot of questions, again, still maybe not fully addressed about the discounting, which is a different convention than what we've talked about before. We will provide additional guidance on that. Again, it'll be supported by third-party opinions from legal and accounting. I think, let's see, assuming assets are performing. One question I think was asked about in 10 years, if you wanted to generate or exercise a liquidity from the sale out of this fund, could you invest into one of our other funds, such as Income Plus? Absolutely. You would enjoy the benefit of that time of paying no tax on your appreciation inside this fund. So you could roll that directly into Income Plus or any one of our other investment vehicles at the time.
You would not be able to roll that into another one of your qualified opportunity funds, assuming that you guys have one that's open at the time. Because Correct. When you take the step up in basis to fair market value, you're not going to have any capital gain. So the great thing is you don't pay any taxes, but that would not be eligible to be rolled into another qualified opportunity fund.
Correct. Yeah, the Income Plus fund is a market rate, non-OZ investment vehicle. So just like, I'm assuming the answer is yes, that you could roll into any new investment.
Sure,
whether
absolutely.
it be
Yes,
stock or, a business or private equity or one of our other funds. So
that's right.
very good. Well, I see that you added your email address into the chat. So if anyone has any questions, Ashley's been great. He's a wealth of knowledge. I'm sure he'd be happy to answer any of your questions. So really want to thank you again, Ashley, for joining today. It's been a lot of fun having you on again. We will hopefully have you back in the near future. And as we determined before we jumped on today, since we're both down the road from one another here in Charlotte, look forward to getting together with you and buying you a beer for jumping on and being so gracious with your time. So thank you again very much.
Absolutely. Appreciate it, Dave. Look forward to getting together here in person. And thanks for all your attendees and the great questions they had. And look forward to answering anything else that I can do for them.
Absolutely. And thank you all for joining. A lot of great questions today. As Ashley mentioned, a lot more fun when we've got an interactive presentation. So, it was great. And we've got a number of folks here within Origin. You've got my email address, and we've got a lot of folks on the investor relations side that would be happy to answer any questions that you may have about suitability of the fund for your particular investment strategy. So feel free to reach out. But thanks for joining, and appreciate our investment partners that joined today. And for those of you that are considering making an investment here in Fund 3, we'd love to have you. So thank you all, and look forward to seeing you next time.